Lorraine Wareham with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Office of Employment and Training, and I am the grant manager for the Talent Pipeline grant, and I'm getting ready to take you through the Standardized Grantee Reporting PowerPoint, which will help you with the quarterly reports that are due on these new grants. Gary Eichen will also be here, and he is the grant manager for the Innovation Grant. So if you have any questions about Talent Pipeline or the Innovation Grant, please feel free to ask us about the reporting, and hopefully we can answer you today. If not, we will definitely give you an answer. The Standardized Grantee Reporting was created and developed by GATA, which is the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. All state agencies and programs are required to utilize the standardized templates. This is supposed to simplify reporting for grantees. And hopefully, if you have several grants, this does simplify things a little bit for you. Now, as for agencies, we have limited discretion. We cannot edit the existing components. We can require additional information, and we can establish protocols, but we have limited discretion on how we can edit this actual document. Grantees may need to install or update their Adobe software in order to use the form. The form was created with Adobe Lifecycle Designer ES4. I'm not going to read the version. The form is for Acrobat and Adobe Reader 10.0 or later. Grantees can download the free reader at the address listed on this page. Now, the forms are attached to this pod, and they were also attached to the meeting invite, so you should already have the forms. But in case you lose them, they can be downloaded, or the free reader can be downloaded at this. If you have trouble filling out the forms, I'm sorry, the free reader could be downloaded at this address. Okay, we have to collect the new reports for all grants. You should have a report deliverable schedule in your grant agreement. This should be on page 42 and 43 and maybe even 45 of your grant agreement. And it says report deliverable schedule. And it's going to have your quarterly finding, what reports are due, when they're due, which is the date in parentheses, and then the covering period that the reports are due. Now, since the Talent Pipeline grants were started on 6/1/18, you're just going to be due for 6/1/18 to 6/30/18, and they will be due on 7/30/18. Now, these reports, if they're not due after a certain period of time, we have to log them into a system. If the system doesn't record these reports as being logged in, they can actually lock you out of your grant and lock you away from receiving funds. So it's very important that we get these reports in and uploaded in time. So again, your grant agreement has your reporting deliverable schedule. You've got your due date, which is the date in parentheses, and the covering period that you'll be reporting for. Okay. Blank grantee reports can be found on the DCEO agency website at the address, but like I said, we attach these to the pod, and we attach the blank grantee report to your email requesting this meeting. So now, I don't pre-populate the fields on the required report. I have too many grants to do that, so I'm sorry, guys. Many data sections in the standardized reports tie directly to exhibits found in the Uniform Grant Agreement. In your Uniform Grant Agreement, on page 2 and 3 in some cases, you're going to find the information you need to populate some of these fields, and I'll go into that a little bit later. You will continue to use and reference tracking databases such as the Illinois Workforce Development System, which is IWDS, and the Incumbent Worker Tracking System, which is IWTS, or Illinois WorkNet for the periodic performance report, and the Grantee Reporting System for the periodic financial report. We need, also this is very important, we need the original report PDF. On the PPR and the PFR, those reports, when you complete them, we also have to enter data into them, so don't scan them in and send them to us. Save them as they are, and then send them to us that way. And I'll also cover this a little bit more later. Contact your grant manager should you have any questions or concerns of anything. Now, on the OET Grant Programs that cover the SIF number and the SIFTA number, I'm going to request for the Talent Pipeline grantees that you use the numbers that are listed in your grant agreement and not the numbers that are listed on this slide and the next couple of slides. Again, it's on page 2 and page 3 of your grant agreement. Okay, the periodic performance report specific. High level of instructions are included on page 1 through 4 of the report. Sections must match information found in the Uniform Grant Agreement. Grantees are to complete sections 1 through 13, the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, SIFTA, the program name and the Catalog of State Financial Assistance, SIFTA, can be found in 1.3 of Article 1 in the Uniform Grant Agreement, which is generally on page 2 and 3 of your grant agreement. A final PPR shall be required at the completion of the grant award, which is listed also in your report deliverable schedule. In your grant agreement, it says that there's a final report that will need to be submitted. The reporting period end date shall be the end date of the project grant period, and the box should be checked yes in section 11 when you submit your final report. If you are already entering deliverable performance information into an existing database, check the appropriate box and enter the database file name between sections 13 and 14. If IWDF is used to track participant data, check the box alternate file or database used and see Illinois Workforce Data Development System, IWDF. If Illinois WorkNet is used to track participant data, check the box alternate file or database used and add C Illinois WorkNet to the file name or database source box, and then skip to section 23. You don't need to fill out any other sections. Once you've completed sections 1 through 13, then it says alternate file or database used, file name or database source. Now, in some cases for the Talent Pipeline, you are reporting on a grant in IWDF and IWTS. Please list both databases. Okay. Data section 23 will still require attention. This comes up in a future slide. If grant funds are not being used for participants, incentive grants are not being tracked in a participant database, the alternate file or database used checkbox cannot be used, and you will need to complete sections 14 through 22. Now, I know the Talent Pipeline are all participant serving, so that won't apply to my Talent Pipeline grant. You will be just reporting that you report in IWDS or IWTS. I will go through the next sections because Gary's grants are innovation grants, and I believe that those will be not participant serving in some cases. Deliverables or milestones, hiring staff, conducting workshops, submitting reports, etc. Performance measures or results, number of people trained, number of jobs created, etc. Any deliverables completed during the period or still pending should be listed in section 14. This must match your uniform grant agreement. 1 deliverable per row. The due date should be entered in section 15. It must match the uniform grant agreement and can be the grant end date. Date completed, if completed during reporting period, should be entered in section 16. If not completed, marked as not applicable. A brief description of progress towards satisfying the deliverables should be provided in the deliverable explanation section, section 17. The grantee must provide explanation in rows below when deliverables are behind schedule and is encouraged to provide explanation when deliverables are ahead of schedule. If the grantee is on pace to complete a deliverable that comes due after the reporting period, the grantee should, at a minimum, enter on schedule in section 17. Grantees can add rows or append supplemental information as needed. Slide 26 will show you how to append supplemental information. All performance measures should be listed in section 18. Must match the Uniform Grant Agreement, one performance measure per row. Corresponding performance standard targets and frequency should be listed in section 19. Again, must match the Uniform Grant Agreement. Example, 25 participants entered into work-based training. Results, actuals are reported in section 20. Indicate whether performance measures is mandatory per terms of grant by entering required or IO for inform only in section 21. Failure to achieve required metrics may indicate grantee is out of compliance with terms of grant. Failure to achieve inform-only metrics might or might not indicate a problem, but by itself would not indicate the grantee is out of compliance with terms of the grant. Section 22 includes checkboxes to indicate all performance measure results are consistent with targets. Focuses on grant to date, not just reporting period. Grantee must provide explanation in rows below when performance accomplishments are behind schedule and is encouraged to provide explanation in rows below when performance accomplishments are ahead of schedule. Grantees can add rows or append supplemental information as needed. See slide 26 for appending supplemental information. Section 23 is required to be completed for all grants, even if performance data is tracked via a database like IWDS or IWTS. 2 CFR 200-301 and GATA mandate that grantees relate financial data to performance accomplishments. Includes checkboxes to indicate if performance is consistent with grant-to-date expected services and expenditures earnings. Grantee must provide an explanation in rows below when performance is not consistent with grant-to-date expected services and expenditures earnings, and is encouraged to provide explanation in rows below when performance is consistent with grant-to-date expected services and expenditure earnings. Now we're going to jump to the PPR supporting documentation, which downloaded. There was a periodic performance report support documentation cover page. The grantee must include documentation from the file or database with the submission of the PPR. It is suggested that grantees submit a plan versus actual report from IWDS for participants serving grants in that system, plan summary report in IWTS, a benchmark report for efforts, etc. Now, if you have trouble downloading these reports, please contact your grant manager and we'll walk you through them. In some cases with my talent pipeline grants, you are reporting in IWDS and IWTS, so you will need a report from both systems to attach to the support documentation cover page. All supporting documentation is to be submitted in a single PDF. The cover page, what that means, sometimes we get people who submit the cover page and then they submit the IWDS and the IWTS reports separately. We need it all to be scanned into one document. So, and that's just for the supporting documentation cover page. The cover page must be submitted with the grant number, the grantee organization, the DUNS number, the scene, and the period covered by the PPR. All reports have a naming convention. When you submit your reports, you're going to end up submitting 4 reports by the time this is done. You're going to submit a PPR report, you're going to submit a PPR supporting documentation report, you're going to submit a PFR report and a PFR supporting documentation report, or trial balance. The naming convention is your grant number, and in this case your PPR support, and the quarter end date. This is not, don't put the date that the report is due, don't put the date that you're submitting the report, put the quarter end date. If it's a final report, you're going to put final PPR support. The same thing, the grant number, final PPR support, and the quarter end date. We'll also go through the naming convention for the PPR here in a minute. Various data elements require explanation for late deliverables of poor performance, but only encourage discussion of better than expected task completion or results. The Department of OET benefits from receiving good news too. Help to establish and promote best practices could help to shape RFPs or NOFOs in future rounds. Now, on the periodic performance report, data elements 24 and 26 are completed by the grantee, and data elements 27 and 29 are completed by the OET grant manager. So enter the name and title of individual from the grantee organization in section 24. Only authorized signatories or their designees is found in the Uniform Grant Agreement and the CEO Acknowledgement and Designee Form for local workforce innovation areas should certify the report. Enter the phone number and email address of the individual in sections 25 and 26. The report does not need to be signed. And then this is the report that you're going to submit. You're not going to print it out and scan it. You're going to submit the report as is to the grant manager. You're going to use the naming convention. You're going to use the grant number, the PPR. If it's the last report, you'll put F for final PPR, and then you use the date of the quarter, the end of the quarter reporting date. These are some issues we see when we get the PPR reports in and they get sent back and asked to be corrected. The grantees don't follow the naming convention outlined in the report. If the grants are not being used to serve participants, then if the deliverable listed as the dot point in Exhibit A of the Uniform Grant Agreement must be listed as number 14. The end date of the grant should be listed in 15. Unless the grant has been fully expended, not applicable can be listed in 16. An explanation about the expenses to be entered in 17. 18 and 21 could be not applicable, and nothing should be checked for 22. Those are common issues we have where we have to send it back and have it corrected. Okay, now we're going to go on to the periodic financial report specifics. Okay, hang on a second. High level of instructions are again included on pages 1 through 4 of the report. Sections A through J and T through F must match information found in the Uniform Grant Agreement. And again, I recommend you use the Uniform Grant Agreement for the finding the SIFTA and the SIFTA number, which is on pages 2 and 3 of your grant agreement. Grantees are to complete sections A through W, The grant catalog of federal domestic assistance, SIFTA, and the catalog of state financial assistance, SIFTA, can be found in 1.3 of Article 1 of the Uniform Grant Agreement. A final PFR shall be required at completion of the grant award for final PFRs. The reporting period end date should be the end date of the project grant period, and the box should be checked in Section I. Section N, indirect cost rate percentage is accepted by the state cognizant agency for indirect cost reimbursement. If no indirect cost reimbursement is requested, enter 0%. This must match the GATA grantee portal. This is not applicable to trade grants. That doesn't apply in this instance. None of you have trade grants. Section O, indirect cost rate description is accepted by state cognizant agency for indirect cost reimbursement. Example, modified total direct cost, MTDC. If no indirect cost reimbursement is requested, enter not applicable. This must match the GATA grantee portal. Again, it's not applicable to trade grants. Section P, since there are funding-related program restrictions that will be monitored, mark yes. Section Q, type in reference to the requirements of Article 41 in the budget for the list of restrictions. Section R, if the Uniform Grant Agreement requires a mandatory match, select yes. Section S, indicate the percentage of match required. If Section R is no, enter not applicable. Sections T through W should be completed by the grantee unless program income or interest were not allowed per terms and conditions of grant. Program and interest income should be separately reported in GRS for compliance with data. I don't believe that at this time you report, oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking of something else. I was thinking of match. Must match GRS 371 screen. That's the program and interest income. When program income or interest were not allowed per terms and conditions of grant, not applicable should be entered. If financials are reported through GRS, then CGRS must be typed in Section X, and Section Y, EE can be left. Section Y through EE can be left blank. Now the PFR supporting documentation. You should have a periodic financial report supporting documentation cover page, and this is going to cover your trial balance. A copy of the GRS screen printout for screens 362 and 371 must be submitted with the PFR. A trial balance of supporting documentation for expenditures must accompany the PFR. A bridge document providing details of why GRS and the trial balance don't match must be submitted if applicable. All supporting documentation to be submitted in a single PDF. Again, we've had people submit the trial balance and the cover page separately. Please don't do that. Submit it all together. A cover page must be submitted that includes the grant number, the grantee organization, the DUNS number, the theme, and the period covered by the PFR. Naming convention is used. Use your grant number, trial balance, and the last date of the reporting period. For the final report on the trial balance, you're going to use the grant number, final trial balance, and then, again, the end of the grant date. Data elements FF and II are to be completed by grantee, and data elements JJ and IR are completed by the fiscal monitor. In Section FF, enter the name and title of individuals from grantee organization. Only authorized signatories or their designees is found in the Uniform Grant Agreement, and the CEO Acknowledgement and Designee Form for OES should certify the report. Complete Sections GG, HH, and II. The report does not need to be signed. Again, this report is not to be scanned in and sent. It is to be saved as it is and sent as it is, because we type in this report also. If you scan it in, we can't type in it. The naming convention for the grant number is the grant number, PFR, and the last date of the reporting period. In this case, it'll be the grant number, PFR, and then 6/30/18. Final report example will be the grant number, F for final, PFR, and then the end of the grant date. Okay, again, these are common issues we have where they get sent back or it slows the process through the system. The grantees don't follow the naming convention outlined in this report. If indirect cost rate is not applicable, put 0 in N and NA in 0. P is not marked yes and nothing is entered in Q. If no match, put not applicable in F. T and V should match the 371 screen in GRS. X should say CGRS. Supporting documentation is the trial balance, the GRS screens, and if applicable, a bridge document. The Consolidated Year-End Financial Report has not yet been developed by GATA, so no need to worry about that yet. And that's all I have. Again, I want to reiterate that 4 reports will be submitted when you submit. You've got your PFR and your trial balance support documentation cover page, so that'll be 2 documents. You've got your PPR and your support performance cover page with the supporting documentation. So when you submit, and I would like to ask for my case, my grant, that you submit all 4 documents at the same time. Don't have somebody submit the financial reports and don't have somebody submit the performance reports. I have a lot of grants, and it's a lot easier when one person submits all the documents at the same time. And I think Gary's nodding, so he agrees with me on that case. So I'm going to open it up for questions. It says here, is the performance report the same as the programmatic report? Scheduled report due email sent out Monday with the financial report due email? Yes. The performance report, they're due on 7/30. And these are just, since your grants just started on 6/1, they're just due for that month, 6/1 to 6/30. So in some cases, on these grants, on the IWDS and the IWTS supporting documentation, you can put that no information has been input into IWDS or IWTS yet because the grant is just a month old. You don't have to go out to IWDS or IWTS and print out a report because you haven't had a chance to input any data yet. And in some cases, we're not even done setting up IWTS or IWDS for these reports, so you can't even access that at this time. And the same with the trial balance. If you want to put down on after the cover page for the trial balance, if you want to submit a sheet that just says, we haven't input any costs yet for this grant, just submit that with your cover page, and that's fine, because we understand in some cases you haven't submitted costs for those grants since they're just a month old. Any other questions? Gary, do you have any comments?
No, I don't think so right now.
Okay, the 4 reports are your PPR, which again is going to be submitted just as is. Don't print it out and scan it in and submit it to us. Send it as the data that you type in and then send it to us that way. You'll have your cover page and your supporting documentation for the PPR, which will be your IWDS or your IWTS, or in some cases both reports. And you're going to have your PFR report, which again, don't scan it in, send it in as is, because we have to type in that document also. And your periodic financial report cover page with your printout screens from GRS and your trial balance. So those are the 4 reports. And no, we don't have dates available yet for IWDS training. We will be getting those. Does that answer your question, Leah? Do you submit a second report for matching expenditures? I'm not sure I understand that. You submit a bridge document. If your GRS report doesn't match your trial balance, you submit a bridge document. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure I follow.
She may be talking about match dollars or leverage dollars, but I don't think our grants require a match.
We have match on some of the talent pipelines.
Okay, that's fine.
But we do not at this time, you do not have to report matching dollars in GRS. So if you have matching dollars in a report, just submit that with your periodic financial reports in the cover pages. So if no data has been entered yet, we can attach sheets that say no data entered with cover pages. Yes, if no data has been entered yet, you can attach sheets that says no data entered, because like I said, the grants are just a month, they were just for a month reporting period. I'm sure you haven't had a chance to do that in most cases. So yes, that is true. No data has been entered. You can submit sheets that say no data has been entered with the cover pages. Any other questions? And again, Gary and I are available for any questions that you have. Please feel free to call us, email us. I know we're really swamped right now trying to get these grants up and running, especially in IWDS and IWTS. But please know we're available here for your help, to help you in any way we can. And thank you for your time.